Hello my lovelies, welcome to my channel. My name is Jade and I help people take back their power physically, mentally and spiritually through raising their own frequency. Now today is a very sought after video. I've had a few recommendations for, and that is exposing fake gurus, in particular fake spiritual gurus, which unfortunately there seems to be a huge amount of currently, especially on YouTube. Now, I'm not making this video to cause drama. I feel it's really, really important for people, especially who are new to spirituality and have their initial spiritual awakening, to know how to spot a fake spiritual guru, to be fully aware of the manipulative psychological tricks that they play on people and how they use this manipulation to suck you in and to basically trap you. It can have really dire effects and it can actually be quite dangerous because these gurus have no compassion. A lot of them are extremely narcissistic and basically just want your money. It's really that simple, and power. So what they do is they'll continuously gaslight you. They'll continuously blame you. So, for example, if you pay thousands of pounds for their course to change your life, if you don't change your life, if it doesn't work, so if their course doesn't work for you, it's your fault because you weren't dedicated enough, you weren't spiritual enough, you weren't positive enough, blah, 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 blah. So they'll constantly use this gaslighting, which is a huge narcissistic trait and trick of manipulation, to make you doubt your own intuition, to make you doubt your own discernment. And then when you try to call them out, they'll call it, oh, you're being judgmental, when in reality, it's discernment. So this is why these sort of people get into the spiritual niche and category and industry, because there's so many scapegoats that they can use in order to always avoid taking accountability for the wrongdoings and the damage that they actually cause to people mentally, financially, spiritually, and even physically. And it really is a dark side to, the whole well-being, self-help, spiritual side that's going on today. And some people literally get away with murder. For example, the breatharian woman, Josephine, I think her name was, or Josephine. Apologies if I do her name wrong. She is very well known as a breatharian. But back in the day, in I think the early 90s or 80s, she literally killed 3 people because they done a 21-day program. She released a book basically on how to become a breatharian in 21 days, which in itself is people who are genuine breatharians. Let me tell you, it takes years to prepare your body to actually be even capable of attempting to live off pranic energy alone. Like, that is an extreme thing, and many people don't live in climates that are nearly enough to sustain that. And so for her to release such a book, a program which literally killed 3 people. 3 people died attempting it from severe dehydration, kidney failure, malnourishment, and they died. And she, again, took no accountability for it. She just said, oh, they weren't dedicated enough. Just all the excuses, the typical narcissistic gaslighting. So she literally got away with murder, and to this day, she still has followers. Like, it's literally that insane. And, but this goes on in all aspects. I'm going to put it into 3 categories of the typical fake spiritual gurus that you will see in this sort of day and age. And the first one is what I call the kind of Tony Robbins wannabes. So basically, they're typical entrepreneurs, typical businessmen, and they come across, the secret, and they come across how successful esoteric teachings such as the law of attraction is, and basically they use that to their advantage to then sell their products. So they don't even have a spiritual background, they're not even spiritual themselves, but they know that meditation, yoga, law of attraction, manifesting is now become a multi-billion-dollar industry. Even crystals and everything that is esoteric and new age has become, huge money makers. So you'll see people left, right, and centre, and there are some people, I'm not going to name names, well, not all of them. But I had a very lovely woman message me on Instagram yesterday, and she came forward with her story of basically getting very involved very recently over the last few months with a very well-known YouTuber within this sort of industry, a niche. And he basically proved to her that he was a fraud. And there's lots of content on him anyway, and I've seen other people calling him out. But let me just say that he's, the one who always poses in a Lamborghini. So even that should just be enough. That's a red flag in itself. You don't have to show off your wealth to justify your credibility. You don't have to be a millionaire to prove that you're spiritual. Because in essence, that doesn't mean shit. Because there are so many people who are multi-billionaires, even trillionaires, and they're not spiritual whatsoever. So making money is not about spirituality. Of course, you can have a large income and be spiritual. Money isn't evil, but to use it as, your only accreditation to justify that your teachings are correct is a huge red flag. Because these people solely focus on manifestation. If they solely focus on wealth alone, then that's a red flag. That is not what spirituality is about. Genuine spirituality is about wisdom, love, empathy, compassion, being of genuine service, being a genuine light worker. That's what starseed souls are all about. You've come to this earth to be practical, to be grounded, and to give practical advice and do actually take action in assisting the planet, in people evolve to a higher consciousness so they can reduce their suffering. And at the same time, you learn your own lessons, you expand your own consciousness. So you have to have that morality. And people in this niche in particular, they avoid having morality because they can then justify their bad behavior. They can then justify their narcissism. With this woman in particular, she says that she done 2 free courses. So this is how they reel you in. They'll always offer something free, especially courses, very personal one-to-one things. So with her, with this guy, they done 2 one-to-one Zoom calls with her, because this is how they hype you up, this is how they reel you in, basically. This is how they hunt their prey. And then they obviously brainwash you and manipulate you to then to purchase their expensive course. And this is where people then start wasting hundreds, thousands of their hard-earned money on people who really are just full of shit. And in this one in particular, once she paid for this course, she realized that this guy was a complete fraud. They then openly admitted that he had no background in spirituality. He was actually a businessman, and he came across Ralph Smart's video of how to manifest and the law of attraction, and he realized how popular and how successful it was, how much likes and followers he had. So basically, he admitted he literally copied Ralph Smart, from within the waters, and added his own spin on it, and then there you go. You became an esoteric, businessman. But these people, these businessmen, they prey on spiritual, people, basically because most of the time they are easy targets. because most people come to the spiritual communities because they are in pain, because they are having life troubles, because they are depressed. They are basically desperate and they are vulnerable. So they're desperately trying to seek an answer. They're desperately trying to get help. But unfortunately, they fall prey to these snakes. And these snakes then latch onto them, fucking wrap around them, and then suck them dry of all their energy or their money. And then they blame you when you don't succeed. And then they gaslight you if you turn against them or question their teachings. So it's such a deeply toxic thing. And I've seen it time and time and time again, over and over. And they just keep spreading loads of lies and misinformation. Go check out my 5 biggest New Age lies. Because if any of them tell these lies, then you could figure out for yourself that they are definitely a no-go and a red flag. And one of the biggest ones is there is no good or bad, and that literally is because it's a psychological trick to justify their own addictions and to justify their own narcissism and to basically avoid all accountability. And so they don't have to come across as compassionate, loving, and actually care about you. You really need to learn how these people, these snakes, really prey on you. And they use vast tactics, a number of tactics to really get inside your head, to fully manipulate you. A lot of them will have a background in psychology, so they understand how to basically be very good salespeople. Because they learn all that and then they apply it under the disguise of spirituality, so they are trustworthy, so they come across as trustworthy. A lot of the time these people are what I have branded New Age parrots. So basically they're the New Age BS parrots. They see other successful New Agers, esoteric teachers, and they basically copy exactly what they say. So that's another red flag. If these people are literally saying the same old BS, the same old typical things about law of attraction and blah blah blah, then they're not original, they're not authentic, they haven't actually connected to their higher self, they haven't actually connected to source truth. Because if they had, they would not be puppeting this BS all over the place. And they only do this because they know it's what people want to hear. They only do this because basically it's not about spreading truth, it's about making money for them. And they know by making people feel having a temporary feeling of empowerment and a temporary feeling of being connected to a group of, conscious people, and having that kind of relief and that hope, they get your hopes up, then they know that's how they can reel you in, especially when you've come from such a dark place. But that's how you spot these type of people who are just, the fake business spiritual people who are literally all in it for the money. They don't focus on any sort of activism work. That's another thing that someone isn't actually compassionate, is they never talk about real life issues. It's always about them, me, buy my masterclass, do this, do that. Everything is about them. So the whole content is always about them, or manipulation to try and reel you in to have your dream life, manifest, being a millionaire, blah, 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 blah. And they try to justify their, luxury lifestyle, and they show it off externally. And this, again, is a massive manipulation tactic to just reel you in, because it's like dangling candy in front of a baby. And just use your own discernment. And the only way to generally have good discernment is to raise your own vibration, raise your own frequency. That's what massively helped me, on my spiritual journey. I fell for people's tricks, I fell for people's BS. And it can be nasty, it can be really dirty, it's very messy, and you have to be really cautious because you're stepping out onto, a place full of snakes. You have to be very cautious. The second sort of type of fake spiritual guru is the more sort of culty type. So it's the more, these people can be posed as sort of fake gurus in like ashrams, Hindu gurus, Indian gurus. And a big one that came out recently was the whole controversy about Nithyananda, sorry if I'm pronouncing his name wrong, and Sarah Laundry, I'm terrible with names, I'm sorry. I I really recommend checking out her channel because she was a follower of his for 9 years. She was literally like the spokesperson of his ashram and would, get so many people to join him. And he is basically a huge fraud and sexual predator, and he cons people out of thousands of pounds. He is a complete con artist. It's astounding that he's got away with it. But for many, many years, he's been completely brainwashing people to believe that he is a reincarnated Shiva, that he is a god. And it's just insane. It's ludicrous. So go check out her channel. She goes through all of it. But with these sort of people, again, they're narcissists. They are only wanting power, money. They want to be worshipped as gods. They literally pretend to be on such a high pedestal. They always look their nose down at people, and they will continuously justify all their bad behavior. It's just insane what he gets away with, literally cheating and, shagging like all his, so many different women and men. It's insane. And the biggest trick that these people use, especially in ashrams, is, it gets really dangerous. And people, again, have actually died in this ashram. People have got seriously ill. And again, go check out her channel because she goes through it a lot. There's many people now exposing him, thank God. But then, unfortunately, he has many of his followers who are so brainwashed that they defend him and they're very aggressive to anyone and make up loads of lies to justify that he is Shiva, because, again, it's their ego. They don't want to believe that this man is a fraud, because then it means that it shatters their whole paradigm and their whole life. But basically, a really good way to see if a guru, and particularly the Indian gurus, are fake, is when they use certain tactics that make people more susceptible to being brainwashed. And the biggest one is sleep deprivation. And this is something that he done a lot. So he would force his followers to literally only have sometimes 3 hours sleep a night. And this makes people literally go insane and be really weak-minded and be very weak physically and, basically very easy to control. There's also a lot of claims that he actually uses black magic, and I believe that he did because when someone like me who studies demonology and understands it and occultism, you'll see that there is a vast number of occultic black magic things that happen in India, especially with these sort of gurus. And basically, they use black magic to seduce people. They use black magic to bring people to them. And even feed off their energy. For example, all his followers have to wear a little collar with his face on it, a necklace, and they're not allowed to take it off. So they're literally like tagged, like dogs, like servants. And by them doing this, it actually is a way, an etheric connection for him to feed off their energy. But this is deep and it takes a lot of explaining. But there is a vast number of people using black magic to become very powerful leaders and get millions of worshippers, followers, money. Sadhguru is also another one. Sadhguru I'm very 50-50 on, but my gut tells me there's something not quite right with him. I, again, used to love Sadhguru and thought he was awesome until I kind of dug deeper and started to see some very questionable things about him. In particular, he's quite rude to a lot of people when they ask him questions. He always has this kind of way of, looking down, especially on Westerners, and just a certain type of arrogance. But the biggest red flag for me with him is the death of his wife. Because unfortunately she died, and it was very controversial and weird how he kind of covered up her death. And this happened quite a few years ago, and it was hidden that she actually left him a year prior to her death. So she broke up with him, and apparently she adored him and she loved him very deeply. However, she caught him cheating. And just that in itself is astounding for a well-renowned guru to cheat on his wife, where many times he advocates being, faithful. He advocates about treating sex with, seeing it as sacred and not to basically mess around with loads of people, not to be sexual with many people. And Nithyananda actually says this as well to his followers, but then he sleeps with women, which was caught on videotape once, by the way, behind all his followers' backs, but then commands that they be celibate. And Sadhguru was kind of the same, not celibacy, but to be very cautious of who you sleep with, etc., which I agree with. But then apparently he cheated on his wife, so she left him over this. But of course, it wasn't made very public. And then, surprise, surprise, she ends up dead. And he says that she chose to die, that she transcended to heaven. Basically, gurus and Buddhists do this a lot when they can reach such a high level of consciousness that they can literally choose to die for their soul to leave their body. But this sounds like complete BS, because his wife actually wasn't even into yoga. She just helped him do a lot of like the sort of labor and ground his work within the ashram. She was not very much into that sort of thing. So ironically, but somehow she had the amazing, super power ability to be able to transcend into heaven at will, which is like, just ridiculous, really, for someone like that to do that. And why would she want to do that when she loved him so much? Why would she want to leave him, especially when she was at, middle age? It just doesn't make sense. And what's even more controversial is there was actually a newspaper article released about her father accusing Sadhguru of murdering her, because she basically, in India, when someone dies, they have a very long process of a funeral. I think it goes on for like 2 weeks. And her father lived on like the other side of India. And ironically or weirdly, Sadhguru called her father when she died and said that she was being cremated the next day. So her father never saw her body. And that is very controversial. That's very unusual. They do not normally do that. They normally, treat the body, wrap the body up, and they take a long time. They do many rituals and ceremonies when someone dies. And they treat it with very, a lot of respect and allow the family members to say goodbye, that sort of thing. But for Sadhguru and her father, it seems like they were hiding something, and obviously if she was in a particular way, then obviously they hid it. If she was obviously they wouldn't get rid of the evidence of that. So that's a whole other, weird issue with him. But of course, these narcissists are very smart. As you can see with Sadhguru, they always know what to say. They're very good at manipulating. So you need to always have great discernment and never allow people to make you feel stupid, to make you feel dumb, to make you feel like your intuition isn't correct, because a lot of the time they gaslight you to doubt your own intuition, because your intuition is a threat. So you do not need to be spending thousands of pounds on retreats and courses and this and that to become enlightened. Third sort of category is gurus that are more found within the tantric communities. So these are the more sexual tantric people, which obviously you can imagine there is an abundance of perverts and sexual predators that are very drawn to this industry. And there was actually a story about an ashram, a Story Center in Koh Phangan, which is actually in Thailand and an island that I visited. And apparently there was a guru there who massively was, again, a very manipulative narcissist who tried to convince all his female followers to have sex with him. And they will do this and try to make out like by you having sex with them, it makes you enlightened, it gives you superpowers, it gives you all this beautiful energy, you become close to Shiva or God. It's BS, okay? They are perverts and they are literally trying to say anything they can to you so they can have sex with you. And this man was, the guru of this place, and basically he was extremely sexist. A lot of their teachings was very anti-female, and many women actually got STDs from him. And basically, this happens a lot. I've even seen this with myself, when you see certain spiritual conscious men on social media pretending to be very loving and respectful of women, etc. Tantric teachers, but unfortunately they are just perverts, and behind the scenes they're trying to do they just want to have sex with you, and they're trying to disguise it as a spiritual thing. So, don't fall for that. Don't get tricked into that. And you do not need to be having sex with anyone to become spiritually advanced or enlightened or whatever. You do not need to be. If anything, that drags you down massively. And your own energy is what you need on its own. So obviously this is a very deep topic, and I might do a part 2 if you want me to speak more about this, and let me know in the comments below. But ultimately, the most important thing is to watch out for red flags with people. Never give your whole energy to anyone. So basically, when getting involved with any sort of spiritual, gurus or masters, one is to always be grounded. As long as you are following the rule of basically always doing things in the vibration of love, then you are on the right path. It really is that simple. And these people on purpose overcomplicate spirituality, basically to manipulate you. And, at the end of the day, if someone has no love, no empathy, no compassion, and they solely focus on their own wealth, on money, on trying to prove that they're powerful, on trying to show off their skills, then that is 100% a fake spiritual guru. So always listen to your gut. Always listen to your own intuition. So this is why the best thing you can do for yourself is to open your third eye, is to eat high vibrational foods, is to basically look after yourself, get enough sleep, okay? Don't sleep deprived, don't fall for that trick. That's another thing that Sadhguru says as well, because you're more easy to brainwash, basically. That's why they say that. So be practical, be logical, research psychology, research narcissism. Always be on guard. Don't just be, so trusting and giving all the time. Have boundaries, have healthy boundaries all the time. And always trust yourself, because basically these people gaslight you to the point where you can no longer trust yourself, so you put all your trust into them, and that's when basically you become their servants and give them all your money, or you give them all your energy. So it's extremely important to do this, as it's so dangerous and can literally destroy your life if you fall for a toxic person's lies. And yeah, just protect yourself. So let me know in the comments below any people that you suspect of, or have, hurt you, or, exploited you in some way, because I think it's really important for people to be open about this and to share about this. And basically just know that you are not a failure. Don't allow these people to make you feel like, oh, it's all your fault, and just constantly blame you for everything and call you, oh, you're just victimizing yourself, blah, blah, blah. Much love and protection to you.
Hey, what? Hey, wait, got your keys. Oh, thank you. Actually, it's a power bank. Really?
Have you ever been listening to a spiritual or self-help teacher and this happens? Oh, no. Well, in my experience, this feeling occurs because of one of two reasons. First, the teacher triggers you because from the way that you perceive the world at this point in time, and based on the way that you identify within yourself, this thing that the teacher said doesn't align to that story that you live by in your head. And so therefore, your ego gets very triggered and has resistance towards accepting or seeing that perspective of the truth. The second reason we can have this icky feeling when a teacher shares information that doesn't jive with us is because of our intuition. We get this innate knowing that something isn't right, something isn't in alignment. But obviously, when our ego is triggered by something, the story in our head tells us that it's our intuition, tells us that we're seeing this situation for exactly what it is. So how do you tell the difference? If someone is a false prophet or if someone is hijacked, does that mean you throw all the information that they've provided you out the window? Well, that's the topic for today's video. So stay tuned. As always on this channel, we have to start off with some definitions. So what is a false prophet? My definition of a false prophet would be a teacher who shares primarily spiritual knowledge or speaks for God/source from a place of disalignment or ego. The reason I didn't just purely say that the teacher is sharing from ego is because all teachers share from their ego. The question is the teacher aware of that ego? Is the teacher taking that ego into account when they're sharing their messages? This is not me saying that every good teacher has to be perfectly aligned. What I'm saying is this teacher is actively aware of their ego, trying to look at their blind spots, so that when they do share information, they're not doing so in a polarizing way. So what is hijacking? Or what does it mean when a teacher is hijacked? My definition of hijacked is the state in which true or aligned information that does come from source is tainted or corrupted by a teacher or by the source that they are channeling information from to keep you resonating at a vibration or in a perspective that prevents you from connecting to source frequency or the highest frequency. So I would consider most mainstream religions hijacked. This doesn't mean that everybody that practices mainstream religion is completely wrong or indoctrinated. There are a lot of conscious religious people. And it also doesn't mean that the entire religion is bad because the religion does stem from truth. But it's been twisted in a way that keeps people in a lower dimensional perspective as opposed to raising and expanding their consciousness. And while mainstream religion does provide a stepping stone for people to more deeply connect with themselves and the world, the way that the religion is structured is so people reach a barrier at a certain stage of consciousness where they can't go above this without breaking the rules of that religion. And so it provides for expansion, but at a certain point it limits you. I want to start off by saying that most false prophets don't see themselves as false. What I mean by this is most teachers that are false prophets or most teachers that are hijacked are not consciously or malevolently lying from a place of greed. They're not trying to manipulate or fool people into believing everything that they're saying in order to get praise and validation. Most of them believe that they're sharing information that could benefit you. They're just hijacked, meaning they're picking up on information or perspectives in the collective consciousness or from higher dimensions that only allows them to go to dimension 8, let's say. So if there are 12 dimensions, assuming that 12 is the dimension of God or source frequency, and we are in the third dimension expanding our level of consciousness to go beyond that, if we take on a set of practices or a set of beliefs that are hijacked so that you can only expand to the 8th dimension, then you're not going to be able to reach dimension 12 unless you expand beyond those sets of practices and beliefs. From one perspective, every teacher is hijacked to an extent. This basically means that everyone holds beliefs that could be limiting without realizing that they are limiting. Because what is a limiting belief? It is a belief that you hold within yourself that prevents you from reaching your full potential. And what deprogramming is basically looking at the way your mind works, seeing what thought patterns or limiting beliefs you have that prevent you from expansion, and being able to take out those lines of code, being able to replace that code with something that furthers your expansion instead of limits your expansion. And because we've grown up in a society or a culture that places a lot of limiting beliefs on us, we are all hijacked from a very young age. And it's about us being able to see what aspects of ourselves are hijacked so that we can share information that promotes expansion instead of contraction. So now that we know what false prophets are, what hijacking is, and what that looks like in the context of your life, here are the 8 signs that a teacher may be a false prophet, or 8 signs that the teacher might be hijacked. Number 1, they don't practice what they preach. Obviously, this can be very difficult to discern if you don't know somebody in person. Social media and the internet is filled with people's highlight reels. So if you're only seeing a teacher in their best moments, it's kind of hard to know whether this person is practicing what they're talking about in their everyday life. But sometimes, even when a teacher is putting out content, you can see a little slip. So for example, let's say there's a teacher that says, don't talk badly about others. And then a few months later, they post a video shitting all over another spiritual teacher by name. Obviously, the information that they were preaching did not match their actions. And of course, this is going to happen to all of us. Of course, this is always going to happen from time to time. We know something is right or in alignment with us, and our ego leads us to take unaligned action anyway. But usually, if a teacher is self-aware, which they should be, they will be able to take accountability for their actions. And oftentimes with teachers who don't practice what they preach, it kind of feels like they're just saying what they think they're supposed to say. It feels like they're just saying what they know logically, instead of saying something that comes from inside, from their pure, authentic truth. The second sign that a teacher is hijacked is that they are judgmental. They often look down on or belittle others that don't agree with them. There's almost this air of better than thou mentality. They almost act like they're on a pedestal, and that if you're not at this level with them, then you're somehow below them or beneath them. And oftentimes in their practices, they will tell you that you're better than other people. But at a soul level, we are all inherently worthy. Your worth is not defined by the energy you're embodying. That's what your experience is defined by. So this teacher almost creates this feeling of hierarchy. And some moments they will lead you to feel really good about yourself. But when they say something that you don't agree with, or you feel like you haven't reached that level yet, then you start to feel really shitty about yourself. Obviously, sometimes our own internalized judgment can feel like it's the teacher that's judging us when really it's just ourselves. So it is important to tell the difference between a teacher projecting their own insecurities and beliefs onto you in a way that's polarizing, as opposed to your own polarized beliefs causing you to feel like there's a hierarchy. Number 3, this teacher thinks that they're always right. Any aligned teacher knows that you don't know what you don't know. All of us are just making sense of what the truth is based on our personal experiences and what we intuitively know to be right. But when a teacher is hijacked, they will have a lot of resistance to other truths. Instead of seeking to understand where the other perspective is coming from, they instantly go to the defense. And they have a lot of resistance to being wrong. The 4th sign that a teacher is hijacked is they only consider one perspective, or they refuse to consider certain points of view. They have trouble seeing a situation or topic from a multidimensional perspective, and they truly feel like there is a right and wrong perspective. They believe that other perspectives are bad or below them. Oh, I've already transcended that idea. Oh yeah, like no, I'm already above that. And so they're still seeing things as all good or all bad, instead of seeing the nuance within everything. Number 5, they make you feel bad about yourself. Again, this is very important to discern whether this is from a place of your internalized insecurity, or if this comes from a place of this teacher saying things, insinuating that if you don't meet certain requirements, if you don't do certain things or practice certain practices, then that means that you're not evolved enough. And so when you hear this teacher talk about where they are and how they're so high vibrational and it makes you feel like shit about yourself, because you're being made to feel like you are below this teacher. They make you feel stupid or less than for not being where they are, for not understanding all the information that they're presenting. You feel like there's a time limit on your growth, when literally every single teacher you see has been at a point of deep unconsciousness. Every teacher you see has struggled with limiting beliefs and can be still struggling with those limiting beliefs. And they're not going to be making you feel like shit about yourself for being at a part of this journey that's very important to be in. Every single step in this journey is equally as important and equally as beautiful and equally as valid. And any teacher that makes you feel like you're less than for being at a certain part of your journey is hijacked. They're not fully aware. The sixth sign that a teacher is hijacked is that they are stuck in their ways. There's a lack of change or evolution, or there's a big resistance to changing their practice. Maybe they say you always have to be vegan no matter what. Maybe they say you have to destroy your chakras. You can't balance them because the chakra is like a prison system or a limiting system. And they're unable or unwilling to try something different out of a place of fear. Maybe they don't see it as fear, but any teacher that refuses to step outside of their box a little bit and just dip their toe in something else, just to see the appeal, has a resistance to change, is very attached to their ego, very attached to their sense of identity, because their identity is attached to these practices or this way of being. It feels very one note with their perspective. It feels like they're only looking at things from one angle or one point of view instead of trying to give you the full picture as much as they can. It almost feels like this teacher is indoctrinated in their own belief system without any desire or need to see beyond that. Number 7, they make you feel obligated to do things. As I said before, they make you feel like you have to be vegan, you have to do yoga every day, you have to meditate every single day. And while there are teachers who swear that being vegan has drastically helped them clean up their diet and raise their vibration, and honestly, meditating every day can be a huge help in you becoming more self-aware and coming even deeper into alignment. But any teacher who makes you feel like you need to do these things in order to expand creates these conditions. So when you can't meditate and you're on a family trip and you don't have a lot of time by yourself and you just spend time with your family, you feel like, oh, I'm falling behind. Instead of saying, okay, I'm at this point, and by not meditating, I'm taking a day off, I'm taking a break, and it's fine to do that. If you're just doing the spiritual things or doing the self-help things because you think it's what you need to do to expand, it's like a requirement that you have to check off of a to-do list, there creates this sense of A, obligation, which comes from a place of fear, and B, it creates limits because if you don't meet these requirements, then that means you can't expand, and by believing that, then when you don't do these things, then you are going to be stuck because you believe it, and so you create that experience for yourself. And the 8th sign that they're hijacked is they constantly point the finger. They will often project false prophethood onto other teachers, typically by name. They will give you all the reasons why a certain teacher is hijacked, either something that they channeled or something that they saw in one of their videos. And as someone who can receive or download information, I know that when you channel or when you connect, your ego can influence the messages. Your ego can get in the way and change the way that you are perceiving the information that's coming in. So for example, if you are doing a visualization and you're like, oh, this person has a dark entity speaking through them because that other teacher triggers them, then they will see that visual regardless of whether or not it's true. And where downloading and channeling information comes in most accurately is when the ego steps out of the way, or when the ego does speak up, you become aware of what that ego looks like and what that ego sounds like, so that the information comes through as cleanly and objectively as you possibly can. And oftentimes these teachers will make you feel almost as if they're the teacher that you can trust. They're the only teacher you can trust. They have resistance towards their followers questioning them. Or if they are being questioned, they kind of just shrug it off as, well, you just don't understand yet. You're not there yet. Oftentimes these teachers will even make you feel like you can trust them more than you trust yourself. And believe me when I say, a teacher should always bring it back to you. Because sure, we all have a connection to God or source or whatever you want to call it. But the connection really does come from within. And so while you can connect with God and source in things outside of yourself, like in spiritual teachers or friends or family or pets or the trees or birds or whatever, everything, right? If you are taking the word of God through this one person, through this one channel, you're not getting the direct reflection of source because it's still filtered through that person's ego. So if you see source in that teacher and you see source in your dog and you see God within yourself, then you're not relying on this one teacher to tell you what is and isn't good, because you are the one that can know best what is and isn't good for you. So now that we know the 8 signs that a teacher may be hijacked, what do we do if we think a teacher is hijacked? If someone is hijacked, it doesn't mean that everything they say is wrong or malevolent. Every single teacher is deemed a false prophet or hijacked by somebody. And as I said before, I do believe everybody is hijacked to an extent, because everybody, at least at some point in time, has had limits. And those limiting beliefs may bleed through into their teachings. So what is important to ask yourself when you believe a teacher to be hijacked or a false prophet is, to what extent is this teacher hijacked? And to what extent does that limit me or hinder my growth? One thing that I think is so important to remember is you can deprogram limiting beliefs today and install new info and new beliefs that is necessary for the next steps in your evolution. But in 5 years, it will be necessary for you to deprogram the information that once helped you expand. Because at a certain point in time, those belief systems or that information is no longer expanding to you, it becomes limiting. So you will have to deprogram the information that
Constant threat to Christians everywhere are wolves in sheep's clothing. Wolves in sheep's clothing are people who pretend to be of God, but are actually being puppeteered by Satan himself. These wolves are very dangerous, and they operate in many sneaky ways to draw true believers of Christ close to them in order to devour their faith. If you are not careful, you can open doors to these wolves who can greatly hurt you and your loved ones. The purpose of this video is to provide you with biblical truths on how to identify wolves in sheep's clothing so that you don't become their next prey. Before sharing the tips in this video, let me just say I will treat this topic with as much grace and balance as possible, since there are so many quote-unquote discernment ministries here on YouTube who have wrongly called genuine believers wolves simply because they don't see eye to eye on a biblical point. Be very careful with indulging and watching other Christian YouTube channels content that are constantly calling out other believers as wolves, heretics, and all this nonsense. We must not carelessly call people wolves, because if we get it wrong, regardless of our intentions, we will cause collateral damage to the body of Christ. That being said, You must also not be afraid to call out and rebuke those who are truly being used as pawns by the enemy. In this next part of the video, I'll share with you 3 biblical truths on how to expose ravenous wolves dressed as sheep. Biblical tip number 1, look at their fruits. Matthew chapter 7 verses 15 to 16 say the following. Beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves. One quick way to gauge whether someone is a wolf or a sheep is by their fruits. You can't help but give what's inside of you. Much like an apple tree can only give apples, or an orange tree can only give oranges. No matter how hard wolves try to conceal their inner motives and intentions, eventually their fruits will expose them. Fruits come from a person's core. They reveal what's tucked away deep inside. People don't change overnight, and so their actions give them away little by little. What do I mean by fruits exactly? Is the person in question showing the fruits of the Spirit, such as joy, love, peace, etc.? Check Galatians 5:22 for more details.
Nope.
To identify a wolf pretending to be a sheep, look at their fruits. Since sheep hear and obey God's voice, John 10:27, look at whether or not a person is obeying God or not. While being a sheep doesn't guarantee not making errors, sheep will always obey God, even if it's with a limp. Biblical tip number 2, look at their doctrine. Romans chapter 16, verses 17 to 18. One of the most effective and quickest ways to spot a wolf masquerading as a sheep is by examining their doctrine. Most wolves acting as sheep are smart enough to not come right out and say, I'm against Christ, or I don't really believe the Bible. So you have to pay close attention, not to just what is explicitly said, but also what's implied. Wolves may seem to preach the true gospel on the surface, but if you look beyond that, they often subtly and slowly start to distort biblical truths before ensnaring you and leading you away from Christ. Without fail, wolves will always lead you away from Christ. So pay careful attention to how their words stack up to Jesus' character and heart. You can ask yourself this: how Christ-centered is their doctrine? Are they leading you to directly or indirectly act more like Christ? Do they downplay Christ's deity or importance? Never judge someone's spirituality or maturity based on supernatural manifestation. It's a surefire way to fall into deception. A person's fruits and doctrine is more telling of their relationship with Christ than if they manifest the supernatural. Remember, the enemy can also manifest the supernatural, and in such a way that it can appear as being from God. Remember, the enemy comes as an angel of light. 2 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 14. Biblical tip number 3. Look at their willingness to be tested. 1 John chapter 4, verse 1. One dead giveaway of a wolf in sheep's clothing that is not discussed or brought up enough on this topic is the willingness to be tested. Since wolves are doing something wrong and are cognizant of it, see 2 Peter 2:1. See what I'm saying? They will try to hide certain things to throw off people from digging up their true intentions. The verse says they will secretly bring in destructive heresies, which reveals intentionality, as anything done secretly is also done carefully and purposely. For example, you cannot accidentally throw someone a surprise birthday party. In much the same way, contrary to popular opinion, wolves do in fact know they are wolves. You don't accidentally teach heresies, damning people to hell. Let me clear something up that gets conflated all the time with this topic. A false doctrine is not necessarily a heresy. We need to get the terms we use right, or else we will hurt the body of Christ unintentionally. A heresy is a teaching that contradicts primary doctrine, salvific doctrine, for example, the deity of Christ, the Trinity, etc. There's a difference between primary doctrine and secondary doctrine, and a lot of times Genuine believers are called wolves out of differences when it comes to secondary doctrines like the gifts of the Spirit or the baptism of the Spirit. A heretic is someone who contradicts or denies a primary salvific doctrine. In other words, it affects how someone is saved. It is one thing to think Jesus is not from Bethlehem, and it is another thing to say Jesus is not God. Moral of the story, don't use the word heretic loosely. And that's all for this video on how to identify a wolf in sheep's clothing. Let me know in the comments below if these tips
feet. It's other things too. It's the brain, demonic attachments according to the flesh. They created a connection with the spirits. Father, for every word you say, hanging out with the Lord, and he had me go on my No Time Like the Presence on Facebook, and someone was attacking me, calling me schizophrenic and all kinds of stuff. And Father gave me the correct reply. He told me to go into my messages.
Fake bride number
and he was
one.
like, this person has written you. And he had me post what that person wrote me underneath what they said. And it was literally their demonic possession. So the Lord wants to deliver people like this that are claiming to be the wife of the Lamb. They are possessed or oppressed. Oh, he said she is possessed. So God really loves her. God loves her. God loves everybody who's being lied to by the enemy. Jesus is going to execute judgment against Satan and all his minions that are trying to take up vessels and claim to be me. They need deliverance. There's only one true God, and Jesus has one wife. And I know who I am, and that's why these people are coming out trying to flatter me, and then they turn and
That's fake wife number one.
Like that,
Bride
and
number
then
two.
war will come forth. I am the Alpha and Omega. I am Jesus. I am Yeshua HaMashiach, and there is no other God before you, before me, or after me. I am the great I am.
Number 3.
So sad that you think because a woman believes in God, in the light Jesus Christ, that I have mental issues. Because you believe that way, that makes you the Antichrist.
Listen to the spirit of these women. They share the same egotistical, not of Christ. Christ doesn't boastfully, pridefully do anything. I got a list of them. Like, we're just gonna knock this out so we can one and done it.
Watching a movie, plots are usually pretty similar, though.
Slide number 4.
Over each point to talk to you guys about. So again, I'm going to repeat that the bride of Christ is one human woman who's on earth right now. And this is also a PSA to women, especially women in Christ. So she's one woman, and she will be presented by Yeshua HaMashiach himself, Jesus Christ himself, however you want to use it.
But they're announcing themselves.
Please. Like, she doesn't know her identity, Kate. Like, she doesn't know her identity, Katie. I've made a claim to you. I'm gonna marry you. You're not gonna marry a vessel. Can I explain it to them? Can I explain it to them, Katie?
She's talking
Yeah, 'cause
to
I wanna
herself,
explain what's
not
going
to
on.
Jesus.
So Jesus is correcting me. He's correcting me softly. Very gentle. He's laughing right now. He's correcting me because he doesn't like fear. And he already told me the truth for years, actually. He's told me the truth for years. And to step into my full identity, just like he did with the Father, takes a lot of fools.
Let's see. Probably ain't on this list, but let's. There we go. Exposing false readers, leaders, and teachers. That is my job, to eliminate what y'all can't see. Let's see. Thanks, Sophia. Bride
This is
number
what I tap
5.
in between sessions today, and what I'm doing. It's Boxing Day here. Hoping running through your separation consciousness for 2 months as the woman elected children are attacked. So, this energy of warfare truly is, it's witnessed here and it's running through the 144,000, the church that's being presented. So it's
She is the
very
false
painful.
church.
You're very sensitive, and this Christ mass unity, you're looking for you. You're looking for the true you, which is the soul. That which is what you're being activated here as you fill your oil lanterns up and prepare to meet God, truly. So, you're saying, like, I need you to the Divine Mother. God, Jesus needs his wife. That's what you're feeling. So, calm down. It's Father's yearning. It's not your emotions. And it never was. That's the humbling, and you will humble into this kingdom. Therefore, whoever resists the authorities resists what God has appointed. Get it? And those who resist will incur judgment. For rulers are not a terror to good conduct, but to bad. Would you have no fear of the one?
And when she don't get money, she has a tantrum. She's a false bride. She is not the world soul. She is not Jesus' counterpart, and she is not the bride of Christ, nor the Messiah.
Okay, yeah, the 7 gifts of thy Holy Spirit. So that's really going to come
Christ.
through. If you're just would
She
like
can only tell you the gifts,
general,
but she won't mention,
read,
never in 2 years mentions the fruit of the Holy Spirit, because she's not the Holy Spirit.
And it's going to come through and gift you the understanding, the wisdom, the console, the fortitude, the knowledge, the piety, and the fear of the Lord of what you're going through. So that's really, if you're just looking to get out of the twin flame, emotions, because it is emotional. It's every energy emotion. Like,